you ever wondered how humanity went from speaking one unified language to the thousands of different tongues we hear across the world today? What if I told you that this dramatic transformation wasn't a gradual evolution over millennia, but the result of a single catastrophic moment in ancient history? A moment when human ambition collided with divine judgment in such a spectacular way that it forever changed the course of civilization itself? The story I'm about to share with you isn't just another ancient tale gathering dust in the pages of Scripture. It's a profound revelation about human nature, divine sovereignty, and the consequences of unchecked pride that continues to echo through every nation, every culture, and every conflict we witness today. This is the story of the Tower of Babel found in Genesis chapter 11, and I guarantee that by the end of this exploration, you'll never look at the diversity of languages and cultures the same way again. But here's what most people don't realize about this story. It's not just about a tower or even about language. It's about something far deeper, far more unsettling, and far more relevant to our modern world than you might expect. It's about the eternal struggle between human ambition and divine authority, between unity and diversity, between building up to heaven and being scattered across the earth. Drop a 777 in the comments if you're ready to uncover the shocking truths hidden within this ancient narrative. Because what we're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about human civilization, divine intervention, and the price of pride. The Tower of Babel, Genesis chapter 11. Let me paint you a picture of the world as it existed in the generations following the Great Flood. Imagine a time when every human voice spoke with the same words, when every thought could be shared without translation, when every dream and aspiration flowed through identical expressions. This wasn't merely linguistic unity. It was cognitive harmony on a scale we can barely comprehend today. According to Genesis chapter 11, verse 1, now the whole world had one language and a common speech. But this wasn't just about communication. This was about power. When human beings can perfectly understand one another, when there are no barriers of language or cultural misunderstanding, something extraordinary happens. They become capable of achieving almost anything they set their minds to accomplish. And that's exactly what began to unfold in the ancient land of Shinar, a region we now know as Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization itself. As these early descendants of Noah journeyed eastward, they discovered something that would change the trajectory of human history. A vast plain, fertile and expansive, perfect for settlement and construction. But what happened next reveals something profound about human nature. Rather than spreading out across the earth as God had commanded them after the flood, rather than filling the world and subduing it as their ancestors had been instructed, these people made a choice that would echo through eternity. They chose to stop. They chose to gather. They chose to build. Genesis 11 verse 2 tells us, as people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. That word settled carries weight far beyond its simple meaning. It suggests a deliberate decision to cease wandering, to cease exploring, to cease the expansion that God had intended for humanity. Instead of embracing the vastness of an empty world waiting to be filled, they chose the comfort of congregation. And in that choice, we see the first seeds of what would become one of the most audacious acts of defiance in human history. You see, settling wasn't just about finding a comfortable place to live. It was about consolidating power, pooling resources, and focusing human potential into a single unified effort. When people with identical languages, identical worldviews, and identical ambitions come together in one place, they don't just build communities, they build empires. But this empire had a vision unlike any other. As we read in Genesis 11, verses 3 and 4, they said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Do you hear the audacity in those words? Do you feel the weight of that declaration? This wasn't simply about constructing a building. This was about constructing an identity, a legacy, a monument to human achievement that would touch the very dwelling place of the divine. The phrase, "make a name for ourselves," reveals the true heart of this endeavor. In ancient cultures, a name wasn't just a label. It was a declaration of character, authority, and eternal significance. To make a name for yourself meant to establish a legacy that would endure long after your physical life had ended. It meant claiming a place in history, demanding recognition, asserting your importance in the cosmic order. But there's something even deeper here, something that sends chills down the spine when you truly understand it. These people weren't just trying to build high, they were trying to build their way to God. The phrase "reaches to the heavens" in the original Hebrew suggests not just great height, but an actual attempt to breach the boundary between earth and sky and heaven, between human and divine realms. Think about the implications of that for a moment. These weren't primitive people building a simple structure. These were sophisticated, unified human beings with advanced construction techniques, using fired bricks instead of stone, using bitumen as mortar, employing engineering knowledge that allowed them to conceive of a structure that would literally connect Earth to heaven. Archaeological evidence suggests that the technology they were using was revolutionary for its time. Fired bricks were stronger and more durable than natural stone. Bitumen, a petroleum-based substance, created waterproof and incredibly strong mortar. These people weren't just ambitious, they were innovative, applying cutting-edge technology to achieve their audacious goal. But what was their ultimate motivation? Why this desperate desire to build upward rather than outward? The answer lies in that final phrase. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. There it is, the real reason behind their rebellion. They were afraid of scattering. They were afraid of separation. They were afraid of losing the unity that gave them such incredible power. God had commanded humanity to fill the earth, to spread out and multiply across the globe. But these people looked at that divine mandate and said, "Oh no, we refuse. We will stay together. We will build something so magnificent, so permanent, so impressive that we will never need to leave this place. We will make ourselves indispensable to one another and unforgettable to history." Can you imagine the conversations that must have taken place as this project began? Picture the planning sessions, the resource allocation, the coordination of thousands of workers all speaking the same language, all sharing the same vision, all contributing their skills toward this singular, spectacular goal. The construction would have been unlike anything the world had ever seen. Day after day, brick upon brick, level upon level, the tower rose higher and higher into the sky. With each completed section, their confidence would have grown. With each passing month, their sense of accomplishment would have swelled. They were proving that human beings, when truly united, could achieve the impossible. And in their unity they found intoxicating power. No miscommunication to slow down progress. No cultural misunderstandings to create conflict. No linguistic barriers to limit the sharing of ideas and innovations. They had stumbled upon something that modern humanity still struggles to achieve: perfect cooperation toward a common goal. But as their tower grew higher, something else was taking place in the heavens above. Someone was watching. Someone was evaluating. Someone was preparing to respond to this unprecedented display of human pride and ambition. The stage was being set for one of the most dramatic divine interventions in all of human history. An intervention that would forever change not just the course of this construction project, but the entire future of human civilization itself. What happened next reveals something chilling about the nature of divine observation. While these ambitious builders celebrated each day's progress, while they marveled at their technological achievements and basked in their unprecedented unity, the eyes of the Almighty were upon them, and what he saw stirred something that hadn't been witnessed since the days before the flood: divine concern about human potential. Genesis 11 verse 5 delivers one of the most sobering statements in all of Scripture. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. Think about that phrase for a moment. The omniscient God, who sees all things at all times, chose to come down to examine their work. This wasn't because he lacked knowledge of their activities. This was a deliberate act of investigation, a formal divine inspection that would determine the fate of their enterprise. And what did this inspection reveal? Something that should make every human being pause and consider the true extent of our capabilities when unified in purpose. In verse 6 we read God's assessment. If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Let that sink in. The creator of the universe, the one who spoke galaxies into existence, the being of infinite power and knowledge, looked upon human unity and declared that in their current state nothing would be impossible for them. This wasn't praise, this was a recognition of danger. But what kind of danger could human beings possibly pose to an all-powerful God? The answer lies not in physical threat, but in spiritual rebellion. These people weren't just building a tower, they were constructing an entire worldview that placed human achievement at the center of existence. They were creating a system where God became unnecessary, where human ingenuity and cooperation could solve any problem, overcome any obstacle, achieve any goal. Their tower represented more than architectural ambition. It symbolized humanity's first attempt at creating a secular utopia, a perfect society built entirely on human wisdom and capability. They were essentially declaring independence from divine authority, establishing themselves as the masters of their own destiny. Can you imagine the conversations taking place in heaven during this time? The divine council observing as these creatures formed from dust and breath dared to challenge the very order of creation itself. They had been given dominion over the earth, but now they were reaching for dominion over heaven. The technology they possessed was remarkable, but their unity was their true superpower. Every worker understood every instruction perfectly. Every innovator could share ideas without barriers. Every leader could coordinate massive efforts without miscommunication. They had achieved something that modern corporations spend billions trying to accomplish: perfect organizational synergy. But in that perfection lay their downfall. Unity without submission to divine authority becomes a weapon of unprecedented power. These people had discovered that when human beings are perfectly aligned in purpose and communication, they can indeed attempt anything. And anything included things that violated the fundamental order that God had established for creation. The tower itself was likely a ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid that ancient peoples built as stairways to heaven. Archaeological evidence from Mesopotamia reveals structures of incredible sophistication, some rising hundreds of feet into the air, complete with temples at their peaks where priests would conduct rituals meant to commune with the gods. But this particular tower was different. This wasn't being built for worship or religious ceremony. This was being built for human glory, human recognition, human permanence. They wanted to make a name for themselves that would echo through eternity, to create something so magnificent that future generations would look upon it and remember their greatness. The irony is breathtaking. In their attempt to avoid being scattered, they were actively rebelling against the very God who could have blessed their unity if it had been submitted to his purposes. Instead of spreading across the earth as he had commanded, carrying his image to every corner of creation, they chose to concentrate their power in defiance of his will. What they failed to understand is that God's command to scatter wasn't punishment, it was purpose. Humanity was meant to fill the earth, to establish diverse cultures and societies that would reflect different aspects of divine creativity. The scattering wasn't about separation, it was about multiplication, about taking the image of God to every land and people. But these builders saw scattering as loss rather than multiplication. They saw diversity as weakness rather than strength. They believed that staying together would preserve their power, when in reality it was concentrating their rebellion into a single dangerous force that threatened the very foundations of creation's order. As their tower climbed higher day by day, as their confidence swelled with each completed level, as their sense of invincibility grew stronger, they had no idea that their greatest moment of triumph was about to become their moment of ultimate judgment. The same unity that gave them such incredible power was about to become the target of divine intervention, unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. The countdown had begun. The inspection was complete. The verdict had been reached. And what was about to unfold would scatter not just their bodies across thousands the earth, but their voices into of different tongues, creating barriers that persist to this very day. The divine response came swiftly and decisively. In a single moment, God confused their language, transforming their perfect unity into chaos and misunderstanding. Workers who had coordinated seamlessly suddenly couldn't comprehend their foreman's instructions. Engineers found themselves unable to communicate their designs. The tower that had risen through flawless cooperation ground to a halt as thousands of voices spoke in tongues that no one else could understand. And just as they had feared, they were scattered. Across the face of the earth they went, carrying their new languages with them, establishing the foundations of every nation and culture we know today. The very diversity they had tried to prevent became the permanent reality of human existence. But here's the profound truth hidden in this ancient judgment. What seemed like divine punishment was actually divine mercy. God didn't destroy them. He preserved them by forcing them to fulfill their original purpose. By scattering humanity across the globe, he prevented the rise of a unified rebellion that could have led to even greater judgment. Today, as we witness humanity once again attempting to unite through technology and global communication, the lesson of Babel remains strikingly relevant. The question isn't whether human unity is possible, but whether it will be submitted to divine authority or driven by human pride. The tower fell, the people scattered, and the languages multiplied. But the choice that defined that ancient generation still defines ours today. Will we build monuments to our own glory, or will we submit our incredible potential to the one who created it?